pleasure to see you all here on the, I would say, almost the annual visit of the Board of Governors to Sde-Boker. It is a particular pleasure to welcome the Swiss delegation headed by Mr. Halperin and the Ambassador of Switzerland, Mr. Andreas Baum, and as well Professor Ebischer, the President of the École Polytechnique Fédérale de Lausanne. We are here today to inaugurate, to dedicate the Swiss Institute, and we've got what I hope will be an interesting day, or actually not a day, it's 2 hours. I would like to begin by asking the Ambassador Baum to say a few words. Please.
I'm honored to be here today to participate in the inauguration of the Swiss Institute for Dryland, Environmental and Energy Research. Swiss Foreign Minister Didier Burkhalter, whom I'm representing today, would have liked to be here in person. I was sitting in the car beside him a few days ago. We talked about this inauguration, and he told me how much he would have liked to be part of it. Switzerland and Israel share traditionally strong bilateral relations, which are currently further intensifying and gaining in concrete substance. As you will have heard, Foreign Minister Burkhalter visited Israel just last week. The visit was very successful and reaffirmed the necessity of an ongoing high-level political dialogue and a very strong cooperation in various fields, such as economy and trade, cultural exchanges, and of course, scientific cooperation. There are an impressive number of partnerships and exchanges between Israeli and Swiss academic institutions. The doctorate, which was conferred yesterday on Professor Ebischer, President of the École Polytechnique Fédérale de Lausanne, is a perfect example of the unique ties that link the two countries, both equally dedicated to innovation and scientific excellence. I would like to especially welcome Professor Ebischer among us today. We are very proud and lucky, as we benefit from the generosity of Swiss private donors, to have 3 institutes that carry the name of Switzerland in their title. There is one at Hebrew University, dealing with conflict research, management, and resolution. Another one at Tel Aviv University, concentrating on developmental biology. And the one at Ben-Gurion University, dedicated to dryland, environmental, and energy research, which we're formally inaugurating today. This is a unique institute which was founded and functions thanks to Swiss private donors and foundations. During my first visit in October, I got to witness its interdisciplinary work, as I was introduced within a few hours to solar energy projects, to laboratories with jumping fleas, and to projects dealing with electronic waste, pollution, and with social challenges faced by the Bedouin population in the Negev. The work of this institute is fascinating. Switzerland recognizes its important contribution and would like to go further than simply benefiting from its name. We're therefore looking forward to potential cooperation in the future. Thank you again for giving me the opportunity to be part of the inauguration today. I wish the Institute a long, successful journey. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody, all our friends, distinguished friends, the chairman of the board, Mr. Ambassador, Michelle and Estelle, and Daniel Guggenheim. Good morning, everybody. You know, whenever I need to be energized and inspired, I'm coming to this place. It is literally in the middle of the desert, and it's a huge oasis. And you know, you see it on the screen, you hardly believe that you are here in the middle of the desert. But when you go out and see what's going on there, especially if you follow it up throughout the years and see what a tremendous development has been occurring here, it is really mind-boggling. And you are part of it. And Mr. Ambassador Baum, with all due respect to Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, and we respect them tremendously, you know, what our Swiss friends have been doing here in this place is uncomparable. You know, it is not just an institution. Our Swiss friends are invested here at this campus, this Sde Boker, the Blackstone Institute in Sde Boker. You know, if we would talk in terms of money, because you Swiss people, you understand the money, right? I wouldn't even be able to evaluate it. Starting from the Albert Katz International School for Desert Research, and we have here Mr. Robert Cui and Alain Kestenbaum. I don't see them, but I know they are here, which absolutely affect the whole world. Because if you are talking about 80 students coming from all over the world at any given time, 27 to 30 countries, going back after 2-3 years being here, some of them more because they're doing doctorates, bringing all the technologies and training throughout the world. I'm not talking spreading, you know, being our own ambassadors, but, you know, on the ground, really changing the fate of the world. This is something tremendous. We, of course, have our very good friends from France also invested in this place. So, and now we have our American friends doing the student dormitories. So it is an international campus in all regards, both from the perspective of our friends coming in to help us in and students as well. And the things that are being done here are, I think, to me, and let me be dramatic, unprecedented. Because, you know, you have water research in almost every university. You have solar research, photovoltaic kind of ideas and innovations all over the world, all over Israel. But there is one place on the globe when you have everything in one campus. When people are talking about desalination, they're talking about using solar energy to make this process possible. People are talking about renewable energy, algae, using algae as biomass, but also using algae for other purposes. So people are talking among themselves, students are talking among themselves, and this is extremely, extremely powerful. I'm sure half of the auditorium here, or at least 1/3, are students, and they should attest to what I'm saying right now. And also considering men in the desert, which is something extremely important. And you all know that we have a lot of wars, a lot of immigrations from countries that suffer droughts, they don't have water, they don't have food. So it is not only, somebody asked me, why would the Swiss friends, why would they invest in desert studies? They don't have desert in Switzerland. And I say, first of all, because they know it and they know exactly who we are and we trust in our abilities. Secondly, because they do regard their responsibility about the whole world, which is about 40% of the global desert. And thirdly, I would imagine, I don't know, you have to tell me, they can foresee what is the financial reward later on down the road. Because it will be about money coming in, because there is need for a lot of finance in order to push forward and foster this kind of research. Because it is all about what we need in this world, again. Water, food, energy, and all of it is being done here. So, thank you very much for this effort. I think you're going to gain a lot of what we say in Hebrew, nachis, nachat, a lot of satisfaction from your contribution and your investment here. And I'm very thrilled, extremely thrilled, Professor Abisher, with the prospect and the potential of collaborating with your esteemed institute, especially on issues that we're dealing here in Sde Boker. We have many dreams for this place. We have a huge plan to really build here an international hub for sustainability development of the world, dealing with, again, water, energy, climate, environment, men in the desert. I see Sarab Abu Rabia sitting over there. I'm not embarrassing you. You are my woman in the desert. So we have a lot of dreams and plans for this place that already became a dream come true. And we would very much like to collaborate with you, and I think there is a lot to do in that regard as well. So I bless you all, I thank you very much, and I can promise you again, this is a wonderful investment of yours, and you are going to be very proud about it in years to come. And thank you to the local management. You know, people here are, I mean, coming into Sde Boker nowadays, it looks like, I don't know, like Herzliya Pituach. You know, you see those wonderful houses. You cannot get any more houses here, you know, any more land here. You know, once they come out with a bid, within 2 hours, it is all sold. So if you have some other ideas about how to invest money, I think you're a bit late. Anyway, you are pioneers. So even though it looks like Herzliya Pituach, I really wish that the whole area here will be like Herzliya Pituach, and I know that with your talent, with your energy, and with your vision, it will happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Rivka. I would like now to invite Michel Halperin, the president of the Swiss Associate, to receive the certificate on behalf of the university. Michel, please, would you like a few words?
Mr. Ambassador, Andreas Baum, Ambassador of Switzerland, Chairman of the Board, Alex Goren, Professor Rivka Karmi, President of the University, Ben-Gurion of the Negev, Professor Pedro Berliner, Director of this institute, Professor Patrick Ebicher, President of École Polytechnique Fédérale de Lausanne, dear Boris Salzmann, Director of the Swiss Institute, and through you, all the students and faculty of this institute, and dear friends, and especially dear friends of the Swiss delegation, who not only have come numerous to support and attend in this festive circumstance, but who are all around the years the faithful supporters of the Swiss Associates, of course, but also and principally of this university, including this campus of Sde Boker. It is important for us to be here because it's important to be in Sde Boker. As just mentioned by Rivka Karmi, Sde Boker is not a place like any other place. And maybe during the few minutes that I'm allowed to take to present this institute, let me try to answer Rivka's questions as to why the Swiss should come to Sde Boker and create the Swiss Institute in this improbable place. First of all, it is a Swiss Institute because we decided that, contrarily to what is customary in philanthropy, we didn't want it to be our personal belonging. It's not our property, and we did it with a spirit of supporting Ben-Gurion University and supporting through Ben-Gurion University the State of Israel, but also with the idea that Switzerland has its place for several reasons in such a particular institution. And Switzerland as a collective body, not only the Swiss associates, but Switzerland as a country, to be friendly installed here in Sde-Boker and represented for a long time in combination of science and imagination. And I wish on that occasion to show that Switzerland is a place of creativity, of openness to the world, and of interest in what can be done elsewhere, as the presence of Professor Ebischer, of our ambassador of Switzerland, testifies today. But to answer Rivka, we had many reasons, if I'm thinking of those, to create such an institute. First of all, as everybody in this room, when you come to Sde-Boker for the first time, you get such an emotional shock that you cannot leave it without hoping to have a reason to come back. So as the Swiss associates are complex people, they have decided that they should do something here in order to have reasons to come back. There is another reason for the Swiss to have decided this. They were already deeply committed to Sde-Boker. It's only fair to remind that the Albert Katz International School of Desert Studies has been created thanks to the generosity of one Swiss family. And therefore, there was already the beginning of a connection, and this explains to you why, at some point in time, I have requested to the predecessor of Pedro Berliner, Professor Avigat Vonchak, is there something we could do? Something that you would like to create in this institution? To be totally sincere, there was also another reason. There was, for a short number of years, an American institute created by Roy Zuckerberg for water research, and our French friends, and I'm happy to salute here Gérard Worms, the president, who made all the way to be with us today, who had created an institute on agriculture in Sde-Boker. So I thought the Americans have an institute, the French have an institute, why would the Swiss not have an institute? And you understand that it was not envy, it was a kind of creative emulation which led us to receive with much interest the proposition from the direction of Sde-Boker to create specifically this institute, the description of which as an interdisciplinary institute has been presented by Boris a few minutes ago. So we thought, because we are Swiss, we are cautious, before deciding its worth, let's ask to the best. The best is École Polytechnique Fédérale in Lausanne, so we asked them, what do you think of this project? I don't want to read you the entire analysis, which is not very long, but only the conclusion that we received 5 years ago. It is easy to predict that the Institute will be a notable success, and therefore its establishment is to be strongly recommended. Having received such an indication, there was no more doubt in our minds, and therefore we decided to go ahead with the creation of this institute. But these reasons are not the only one. There were a few additional reasons. First of all, there was a fashion reason. Energy is fashionable. Environment is a fashionable theme, so taking both of them at once was extraordinarily up-to-date, and we thought that we were working in the proper current of the time. And then we thought that the place of Switzerland in this context was natural. Rivka asked earlier, what have the Swiss to do in the middle of the desert? They don't have the desert. This is precisely the reason why they had to come here. They need some desert, and the desert needs some kind of alpine presence. So we brought some of our waterfalls from the high mountains of Switzerland to the desert, and we take with us, at least in the memories, some of the desert back to Switzerland. And why do we take the desert back to Switzerland? We do that because, first of all, we are conscious that the world has changed dramatically in the few last decades. This is named globalization. Globalization is not only an economic way of trading, it's also a perception of the world. We perceive the world as an entity. We know that the globe is small, is lost somewhere in the immensity of the cosmos, and knowing that, we realize better that what happens in the desert in Sde-Boker must have consequences in Switzerland and vice versa. There is no separation inside the world. It is a global world, and therefore what we do here is meaningful to what we are living elsewhere. And finally, there is an ultimate reason that brought us to decide to come here through this institute. It's the quality of the research, but of the people who do that. I mean, doing this kind of research is not only outstanding from the point of view of science, and it is extraordinary from a scientific point of view, but it's also totally challenging from a human point of view. When you are in the desert, as we were earlier this morning at the grave of Ben-Gurion, looking at the waste immensity which is around it, you realize the strength of elements and the weakness of man. And in this context, you understand better how man apparently started to become human in the desert, having to fight against nature to become themselves. And in that sense, I must tell my full admiration to those who stay here 365 days a year in the extreme warmth, in the extreme cold, in the extreme difficulties, far from everywhere, because they believe in deep faith to what they are undertaking. And to take a part in what they do, even if it is symbolic, is rewarding above all other experiences. So I hope, Rivka, that I have answered your questions. We are here, extremely happy to be here, and to wish good success to Swiss Institute in the future and in Sde-Boker in general. Thank you very much.
Distinguished guests and dear friends, in my capacity as president of the Bonatera Foundation, a major contributor to the Swiss Institute, it is my duty, honor, and pleasure to say a few words about Bonatera Foundation and its founder, Max Meyerowski, who was born in Germany in 1866 and died in Geneva in 1949. Max Meyerowski was a pioneer in electrochemical and motor industries. This is how he made his fortune. At the same time, he was a great art collector. He discovered and collected Cézanne, Gauguin, Picasso, Japanese art, and the great Swiss painter Ferdinand Hodler, among others. In the early 40s of the last century, he fled to Geneva, and in his will created the Bonatera Foundation, whose purpose was to help young Jews to settle in the field of agriculture. In his will, there was one condition, however, that made the task of implementing it very difficult. And that was that this activity had to take place outside of what was then Palestine. In a remarkable decision of 1988, the Swiss Department of the Interior, a controlling authority of our foundation, enabled the Bonatera Foundation to be active in what had become the State of Israel, stating in its decision that, quote, had the late Mr. Meyerowski witnessed the achievements of the State of Israel regarding the balanced agricultural development, his will would have been different. End of quote. Our presence here today is a consequence of this remarkable decision. In the last few years, we were thus able to contribute to the funding of innovative projects in the Negev, and more precisely in the Araba region. Among others, breeding of ornamental fish, new methods to harvest crops, devices to regenerate corals, sustainable ways to produce dairy products, creation of agrotourism in the desert. These projects were the brainchild of a number of creative Negev entrepreneurs who should be the pride of Israel. The activity of the Bonatera Foundation has been rendered possible thanks to the enthusiasm and expertise of two outstanding friends. Professor Avigat von Schack, former head of the Blaustein Institute, and Mr. Yezekiel Admoni, whose knowledge of the Negev and Israeli agriculture is unparalleled, and of course, thanks to the enthusiasm and hard work of the members of the Bonatera Foundation Committee, most of whom are present here. My thanks extend to all of them. This brings me to a final point. What our Swiss Institute will mainly do is to fight the plague of desertification in dryland regions. I think that there is a parallel between our two countries, Switzerland and Israel. Both had to face very arid natural conditions, steep mountains covered by snow on most of its territory for Switzerland, desert and degraded land conditions for Israel. Both Switzerland and Israel made a success story of these difficult existential conditions. Let us hope that with the help of our Swiss Institute, other nations will be enabled to turn the situation, which appears today catastrophic, into a success story of its own. Thank you for your attention.
As you noticed, there are two departments. There's another department, which is called the Alexandra Yersin Department of Solar Energy and Environmental Physics. And I would like to invite Dr. Daniel Halperin to say a few words about the name of the department, please.
Yersin, Alexandre Yersin. Who knows this name? A few ones. Actually, few people know this name, and except in Vietnam. And I shall explain in a minute why. Those who do know, for the most part, are either physicians or microbiologists who learned the name of a bacteria called Yersinia pestis. Yes, Alexandre Yersin was the discoverer of the bacteria that causes pestis, the plague, a disease that, as you know, took the life of dozens of millions of people in the world until its cause was determined and life-saving treatments developed. Alexandre Yersin was born in 1863, just 3 years before Mr. Mayerovsky, in a small place about midway between Geneva and Lausanne in Switzerland. And he studied medicine in Lausanne. And then later became one of the most talented students of Louis Pasteur in Paris. He was only 31 years old when he was asked by Pasteur to rush to Hong Kong and try to identify the cause of plague. Because in Hong Kong and in China in general, in 1894, the largest epidemic of plague just erupted. Before this challenging mission, Yersin had already developed an animal model of tuberculosis. He also had identified the exotoxin of diphtheria, two important advances in medicine. But how he managed to identify the cause of plague in just a few days, in Hong Kong, is a fascinating story. Unfortunately, it is too long to be told today. Suffice it to say at this stage that because he was modest, he called the bacteria Pasteurella pestis. And it is only much later, in 1947, 4 years after his death, that the scientific community actually decided to rename these bacteria with Yersin's patronym. This could be all, and it would be enough to show gratitude for Yersin's major contribution to medicine and public health. But there is more. For Yersin was an incredibly curious, eclectic, and creative man. Beyond medicine and bacteriology, he was also an explorer, an ethnologist, a seaman, an agriculturer, a geographist, a veterinary, an animal nutritionist, a meteorologist, an astronomist, and even a good businessman. I mentioned Vietnam. There, Yersin is still nowadays considered as a living Buddha. Universities, hospitals, schools, and streets bear his name. Why? Because before he discovered the plague bacteria, he was a physician on a ship cruising between Saigon and Hanoi. And during these trips, he fell in love with the country. He explored its mountains and valleys. For months, he walked through the jungle of Vietnam, and he opened a new route to Cambodia. In Nha Trang, he built a laboratory that provided serum and vaccines to fight all kinds of diseases, the human plague, of course, but also a very important animal disease that was prevalent in the area, the bovine plague. From his native Switzerland, he imported oxes, cows, horses, sheep, and chicken, which he had to accustom to the tropical climate of Vietnam, not an easy task. He also brought in many vegetal species to improve the agricultural potential of the region. Hevea brasiliensis, the rubber tree, from which he built a very profiting industry at a time when Dunlop and Michelin tires were just beginning their lucrative destiny. Coffee seeds, which still nowadays flourish and make of Vietnam one of the main producers of coffee in the world. Erythroxylum coca, the coca plant, from which Yersin made a beverage which he called coca, years before its American homonym, but unfortunately for him, he failed to register as a trademark. Mountain rice, potatoes, green beans, lettuce, beetroots, carrots, artichokes, linon, apples, prunes, apricots, strawberries, raspberries, peaches, gladioli, orchids, all of these plants were seeded by Yersin and still flourish on the hills of Dalat and Honba. Not to forget the cinchona plants from which Yersin produced the quinine that was necessary to treat another devastating illness, malaria. So here we are. Alexandre Yersin was a bright, innovative, and noble figure who in his own way dedicated his life to tikkun olam, perfecting the creation. As is written in the magazine that El Al passengers can read in flight, the Swiss Institute for Dryland Environmental and Energy Research is based on an unconventional synthesis that brings together experts in architecture, anthropology, ecology, physics, and mathematics under a single umbrella for the purpose of specialized desert research, end of quotation. Alexandre Yersin was just the unconventional and multidisciplinary person that an institute such as this could have dreamed of having among its researchers. May his name be a long-lasting source of inspiration and creativity for all of you at the Swiss Institute. Thank you.